Have you ever had a conversation with somebody who was just so incredibly defensive when you were addressing difficulties in the relationship? I have too. And I also probably have been defensive a time or two in my life. You probably have too. What is that all about, and how do we stop doing it? That's what we're going to talk about today. Sit back and let's learn about this together. So we're continuing on with our exploration of Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart. If you have not picked it up yet, I do recommend that you do so and you read all about these different things. But today we're going to talk about defensiveness. And defensiveness arises out of a need to protect a fragile sense of self. It's about fragile self-esteem, where our mistakes and our imperfections and our failures lead to a decreased sense of self-worth. And when I'm feeling like my self-worth is being attacked, I feel like I need to defend it. My amygdala gets all in play, like somebody is attacking me and I have to protect myself for all I'm worth. So I'm going to beat back against that in defensiveness. She talks about the opposite of defensiveness as being a grounded confidence, that I'm okay even if. I'm okay even if this business venture fails, if I make a mistake in my work, or if I'm anything less than perfect, I'm going to be okay. When I have this grounded confidence, I'm able to hear feedback. I don't get into that defensive posture because it doesn't matter, what happens, what you say about what I'm doing. That doesn't impact my worth as a human being, as an individual, as a friend, as a colleague, because I accept myself. My worth isn't in what I do, in what I have, or how I perform, but rather because I am a human being. And when I have this grounded confidence, I recognize that I'm worthy, that I'm learning, that I'm growing, and I'm developing. And I'm not going to be perfect. So I don't have to be defensive, and I can be corrected, and I can have these things brought up to me. Each of us, even the groundedly confident among us, have areas where we struggle with self-esteem or where we're a little bit more fragile. If we have lots of areas where our self-esteem has taken hits, so maybe we've gone through some difficult times, or maybe our upbringing was such that what we did was how we determined our worth. So if I wasn't getting accolades for my artistic abilities, or if I wasn't getting accolades for my athletic abilities, or my functioning in school, or how I looked, or then I wasn't okay. I had this fragile sense of self. It typically, when there's a family where there's a lot of criticism and judgment, there are more fragile self-egos, and more defensiveness lies within an individual. So when we have more areas where we have a fragile ego, there is more defensiveness, and it leads to, because we have to protect this ego, it leads to over justification of behaviors, right? I did this because of this and this, and nobody's ever going to be happy, and I'm doing my best, right? We make excuses when we're in this defensive posture. Well, I didn't get enough sleep last night, that's why I performed this way. Or we minimize our response rather than we minimize the impact of our mistake rather than accepting it and saying, yeah, I made a mistake and I see how this impacted the team. We go, well, it wasn't such a big deal. That wasn't a big part of the project anyways. So there's minimizing, there's blaming. Well, it's because this person didn't do this or this person didn't do that. It's because they weren't doing their part in the relationship that our relationship failed. So there's blaming that takes place when there's this fragile sense of self. I have to protect myself. This relationship didn't fail because of anything I did. It's because they didn't carry their weight. There's discrediting and discounting of the other individual. Maybe somebody is commenting on your work, but they don't have the same credentials I have. How can they possibly be speaking about this? They know little about this. Or they made a mistake last week, so they don't get to say anything about my mistake this week. There's this refuting and reinterpretation of the facts even that occurs. And this defensiveness blocks people from hearing feedback. And when we're blocked from hearing the feedback due to this defensiveness, the development and the growth potential disappears. We are unable to grow if we're unable to hear the feedback. But when I have these areas where, I did fail in my relationship and I don't want to hear my part in it, so if I make it their fault, then I don't feel so bad. I have to protect myself because I'm a good person. I wasn't the one who did this thing. But if I'm unable to hear the feedback and unable to take a look at myself, then I can't see where in this exchange I did play a part. When we're defensive, we don't listen and we refute and we challenge rather than listening to hear and understand to apply. So even if they're off in their interpretation, if I happen to be grounded enough, if I am secure enough in who I am as an individual, then I can hear that and I can identify my part in the conflict or maybe even in the misinterpretation, but I have to be able to hear it. And often when people are in this defensiveness, they aren't even hearing to understand, they're hearing to attack. They want to attack back and use all of those other things that I listed earlier, those excuses, the minimizing, the blaming, the discounting, refuting, and reinterpreting. They're going to throw all of that back at the person. Smoke and mirrors, because I don't want you to see my own fragile ego. So what do we do about it? Right? How do I overcome this defensiveness when I am feeling like I'm under attack? And I do, when I feel like I'm under attack, when my sense of self and my self-worth is low and I feel like you're attacking all of those pieces that I don't feel good about anyways, so I'm going to bow up and I'm going to defend myself, right? That's a human response when I haven't done this work. So how do I start to do this work? Well, there's a whole body language, and I love how Brené talks about it. When I'm defensive, my posture is often very closed, right? And I'm gonna be crossing my arms. I'm gonna be listening in a very closed fashion, and I'm gonna attack back. So if you're hearing something and you start to feel defensive, you start to feel like you're under attack, she says, actively relax. And just do this with me now. Relax your face. Relax your shoulders. Let your arms hang at your sides and hold your hands open. Be in a more receiving posture so that even your body, remember we've talked about this before, our systems are amazing. Our bodies inform our minds inform our bodies, our thoughts inform our feelings inform our thoughts, right? It's all together. So we can use our body in this way. Relax and take a receptive, open posture. On page 197, she says if it's hard to hear, she will say to the person speaking to her, I'm sorry, can you say that again? I really want to understand. Right? Because when we are having that area hit where we're going to be defensive, where we want to protect our fragile ego, we sometimes have a hard time listening. And you hear my breath like, whew, that's hard, that hurt. Sometimes it's even more than that. Sometimes we're so flooded that we couldn't hear it at all. And we might have to say to the person, listen, I just need to take a break for a minute. I'm overwhelmed. Can we take a break and in 5 minutes come back to this? Because we want to listen. We don't want to defend. We don't want to dismiss. We don't want to minimize what the other person's saying. We don't want to stand in a place of defensiveness. We want to stand in grounded confidence and listen to what the other person says so that we have the opportunity to grow. I hope that you learned something today. I hope that you can apply this. I hope that you are able to say to another individual when they're providing feedback to you, if you're finding it hard to listen to, hey, this is really difficult. Can we take a second and just step back and take a break? I teach this to my couples and to individuals who come in for counseling because we need to be able to hear. And if we are in that emotional brain, we're not listening very well. That break allows us to calm back down, to come back to be able to hear that in the way that it's delivered. Now, if somebody is coming on the attack, we need to talk to them maybe about, let's say this in a constructive way. Maybe bring them into counseling with you so that you can learn how to interact together more effectively. But I want you to learn how to engage in a less defensive fashion yourself so that you can grow. The only person that you can work on is you. You can't make changes in somebody else, but hopefully by changing how you behave, how you listen, and how you interact, you can influence the lives of those around you. I hope that you join me back here next time at Orange Therapy on YouTube. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Put a comment down below what you want to learn about. Do you want me to explore more betrayal and betrayal trauma? Or do you want to look at more ways to develop grounded confidence, or anything else that comes to mind? Throw that down in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you join me here next time at Orange Therapy on YouTube, where you are welcome exactly as you are.